It's lovely to see you all, and it really does feel like an evening of celebration, and I think that's a really fitting atmosphere to enter into this talk with. So we're carrying on our journey around the five Buddha mandala. So we've already been around the mandala once, and it's such a great mandala that we thought we'd go around it again. Because there's so much symbolism and meaning held within these forms, within these figures, and there's so much different aspects to draw out of each one that we thought we'd go around again and draw out some more specific aspects that might not have been so embellished upon the first time round. So they're five, they're Buddhas, they're exemplifying aspects of enlightenment. It's almost like an exploded diagram of enlightenment, or if enlightenment were a white light shining through a prism into the colours of a rainbow, just giving you an idea of what enlightenment might look like embodied in different ways, different qualities of enlightenment. And we're moving through to talk about Ratnasambhava tonight. So we've been around, the last one we had was Akshobhya, who's at the bottom of this picture. And so we're moving around to the figure on the left, which is Ratnasambhava, the golden Buddha, the yellow golden Buddha, who's in the south. And actually, you have to imagine that on the left, which would normally be west, is actually south of this diagram. So Ratnasambhava, the golden Buddha in the south. And we're going to be exploring the ways in which he exemplifies generosity and how generosity can lead to abundance. So that's this evening's talk. I've got a closer up picture of Ratnasambhava. There he is. So his name means the jewel born, or possibly the jewel-producing one. So Ratna means jewel. And here is a beautiful image of him looking very resplendent and golden, with a lot of fertile growth around him, lots of flowers around him. So Ratnasambhava symbolises riches and he symbolises abundance. He's golden yellow, he's in the south. He's associated with the golden light of the midday sun. And I was thinking our midday sun isn't particularly golden all of the time, but if any of you have ever been to other countries, like around the Mediterranean or maybe even India, all day their sunlight is like the kind of sunlight we get towards the end of the day, you know, when everything goes that beautiful golden colour. I think we call it the golden hour, actually, for photography. So if you could imagine like the light being like that in the midday sun, or always like that kind of real golden, rich sunlight. And I was just sitting here and looking at our Buddha here, and maybe it's because of the beautiful yellows that are on the shrine at the moment, thank you to Pete. I noticed how golden our Buddha is. You know, I often see this Buddha and notice the gold, but tonight I just thought he shines even more brightly, almost like Ratnasambhava would. So yeah, this golden, rich golden colour. And I think I've heard it likened to like the ripening corn, you know, like if you have like corn on the cob and it's really rich yellow. And because Ratnasambhava is associated with abundance, he's also associated with like the harvest time where you harvest all the riches that the earth has to offer. And as you can see in this picture, there's lots of beautiful flowers all around him. He holds in his left hand a wish-fulfilling jewel. So this is a jewel that can grant the wishes of all beings, granting them whatever it is that they need to progress, to reach enlightenment. And his right hand is in the gesture of supreme giving. So that's partly why, that is why we're going to be exploring generosity tonight, is because his hand is in the mudra of supreme giving. He's limitlessly generous. And he's really drawing out that the enlightenment state is limitlessly generous. So yeah, he is symbolized with the harvest, with arts, with also the beauty of arts, creativity. In his Pure Land there is endless energy available for creative pursuits. There's overflowing happiness in the land of Ratnasambhava. Love and wisdom is continually increasing in his land. And he's associated with fertility and growth. And I was thinking about how in our land we've had a lot of rain and pursued by a lot of sun. And I can remember, we had like a week of solid rain in the earlier in June. Everyone's like, yeah, we did. And actually, when that rain ended, I went for a walk at Bowl Hill, and it was like the end of a monsoon or the end of a flood. It's like the sun came out, it was beautifully golden, the birds were singing and flying about, and there was so much green everywhere, and I'd never seen our land respond so much to rain and then sun in that way. And I've been in Nether Edge recently as well, and it's like a kind of rainforest or something. So I like to imagine that Ratnasambhava's land would be, rich with this kind of just flourishing growth all around him. So moving on to generosity then, why would his hand be in the mudra of generosity, and why is generosity seen as quite a quintessential fundamental Buddhist virtue? So in some schools, we often talk about the threefold path in Buddhism being ethics, meditation, and wisdom. And we see generosity as being part of our ethical values, to be generous, to not take the not given. But some schools go even further and say generosity is kind of part of that path, even outside of the ethical values that we all try to live by. Generosity is so important, it's kind of seen as this extra kind of part of that path. So you have generosity as well as ethics and meditation and wisdom. So a lot of people in the Buddhist world see generosity as coming first in their practice, and that actually if we aren't becoming more generous through our practice as Buddhists, then maybe our progress will be limited, and we could just go back to generosity and make that kind of our primary practice. And the Dalai Lama is quoted as saying, if you're not sure what to do, do something for others. And a lot of people who've been to countries like Thailand, I've never been really to other Buddhist countries. I've been to India, there are a lot of generous people in India, but I do hear people coming back from places like Thailand, and that being kind of their first contact with Buddhism, and then they come here. And they say that partly it's because there were so many generous people that they met in Southeast Asia when they were travelling. So I think generosity really is a kind of hallmark of Buddhist cultures. And through this talk, I will draw out how generosity, I think, is a hallmark of our Sangha, our community, and how much we all benefit from that. And I think in some ways generosity, you could see it as quite a natural way to be. I think some scientists have shown how in the wilds, animals do cooperate. So there is a lot of mutual aid within animal lives, and we are animals after all. So it can form quite a strong aspect of the basis for survival, that if we cooperate, we will survive. But I was thinking in that way, and possibly in our own lives as well, there's probably still quite a lot of identification with a group in that. So like species probably cooperate with each other, but are quite against other species, maybe. Although you do see a lot of like birds eating mites off yaks and stuff, don't you? But I think in our society, our groups have gotten smaller basically. So we would have lived quite tribally in the past. And nowadays, the kind of tribal group is getting smaller and smaller, possibly around nuclear families, possibly just around ourselves. And we're often feeling like we have to look out for ourselves and do what we need, do what benefits us. And there's quite a lot of individualism in our society. So maybe we could do with making generosity more of a formal practice for ourselves, so that we can go beyond this self-interest, look to empathise with other people, look to see what is it that others need, and can I enable that in some way? Can I go out towards others? And does this practice of generosity benefit them? Does it benefit me? Can we go beyond ourselves through a more formal or more conscious practice of generosity? And I think probably we would all benefit from reflecting on, are we generous and how are we generous? So again, the basis for this talk. So I think, I don't think, it's traditional that there are lots of many ways of giving. So when we hear about generosity, probably a lot of us will automatically think it's about giving stuff or giving money, supporting causes. But there are actually many forms traditionally in which one can be generous. And we'll just go through this traditional list and explore the different ways we can be generous. So money and material things is one way. Traditionally, the basic needs like food, shelter, and clothing, one could be generous with these things. I'm sure a lot of people brought clothes and books and things and gave them to the summer fair. And I've also heard that in some cultures, instead of saying, how are you to people, people say, have you eaten? And that's like their way of connecting and of figuring out if is there anything that they can do for you? Can they, give you a snack? Which I really liked. So we can give the material things that people need to live, and we can give money as well to enable people to use that for beneficial things. So it's not the only way to give, but it is important. And our Sangha benefits hugely from the financial contributions that a lot of you make and that a lot of other people involved in this centre make. So it does make a huge difference to situations that can benefit from the money that people give. And we can give gifts. That would come under this. So a physical gift would be like a material thing that you can give. And I think also under here you can share. So I think I like to think about generosity as sharing, and I certainly benefit a lot from people's generosity and sharing. I live in a community, so we share a lot there. We share our books, we share, we go shopping for each other and cook for each other. There's many material ways in which I benefit from living in the community. And Satyajyoti has let me drive her car for a number of years, and I definitely benefit from the way that she shares her car. So this isn't saying, material possessions don't have any, give them all away, although that might be a practice of renunciation that you could kind of play around with. But maybe if you do have material possessions, maybe you could share them, you could be generous with the possessions that you do have and allow others to benefit from them. Another way to give is through our time and our energy. So we all have time that we spend doing things, and we all have energy that we put into different things that we do during our lives. So again, a lot of time and energy comes into this Buddhist centre through volunteering, through the people that work here, through people getting to know one another and offering whatever it is that they can do. We had Kevin doing a lot to the front door recently. I don't know if you've noticed how kind of smart the front door's looking. Kevin put a lot into that. So yeah, if you don't have many material possessions, or maybe even if you do, there might be ways in which you can give your time and energy, and that is a form of giving. You can give in this way through friendship. I think it can be really powerful when somebody gives you their full attention. If you're being listened to with somebody's kind of full awareness and they've turned that completely onto you, that can really feel like a gift, I think, that people can offer each other. If people aren't distracted when they're in your company, that's a gift. There's a Walt Whitman quote that Sangharakshita uses a few times when he's talking about generosity, which is, when I give myself. So maybe we can just give our full attention, give our energy in friendship. We can also give any skills or knowledge that we might have. So maybe we know about plumbing, maybe we know about cars, maybe we know about how to pack to go to a festival. There's a few of us going down to Buddhafield Festival, and if you've been to Buddhafield Festival before, maybe you can talk to the people who haven't and tell them how you camp and what you need to take, things like that. So I'm not sure if that comes under the kind of expertise really, but you can give your knowledge, whatever that is about, you can share it with people. And often, again, I think you can see in the corporate world, people charge quite a lot for their expertise. They're like, oh, I'm an advisor and you have to pay me lots of money and then I'll give you my knowledge. But maybe we can be a bit more fluid with our knowledge and just be open-handed with what we know and seeing where that can help certain people. Colette's here, she's been helping a lot with her artistic talents, offering that for creating things for our pujas and things like that. So yeah, skills, knowledge, expertise. One can also give fearlessness. So we had a fantastic talk from Bodhinaga last week on fearlessness, which I'd really recommend. So the Buddha was an exemplar of being fearless, but we ourselves can also exemplify fearlessness for other people, and this is another way that we can give. If we're in a positive state, that can be a real gift to other people. If we can exemplify faith, confidence, conviction, that can be a real gift to people. We can also rejoice in other people. We can use speech in order to be generous. If we rejoice in people and their qualities, especially if they're kind of feeling a little bit uncertain, that can really give them confidence. So this year, fearlessness, confidence is a way we can give. And then lastly, but not leastly, traditionally, we can give the gift of the Dharma. So this is traditionally seen as the highest gift because it can lead to ultimate rather than just temporary benefit. So if people are able to work towards being free of greed, hatred and delusion, and they're doing so upon hearing the Dharma, if you can give the gift of the Dharma, that's seen as like the ultimate benefit to other people. And this can be done in many different ways. It can be done through friendship. It doesn't have to be done through formally kind of standing up and, what's it called? I don't know, there's a word for this. So it can be through friendship, through just kindness, and this can, again, bring a lot of fulfillment to other people's lives. Okay, so there are lots of different ways to give, and maybe you could reflect on the ways in which you probably do, you will all give probably in these ways in your life. But why is generosity so important? You know, we might give in those ways, but why does it really matter? What's so important about generosity? I think one way it's important is that it's one way that we can express metta and love. It's a way that we can express really caring for one another, wanting to kind of cooperate and give people a chance at being well and happy, maybe a little bit more than they already do by giving them something that they need. So if we're cultivating wanting beings to be well and happy during the metta bhavana, this might kind of translate into actual acts of generosity when we're in relation to one another. So not just feeling kind of lovely thoughts about people, but actually putting that into action. So generosity is important because it's a way that we can express metta in our lives. And similarly, in a way, similar to metta, we can express the wisdom of interconnectedness. So we look at this on the intro course. We are interconnected. And if we can really see that or kind of act upon that being true, then we'll see, you know, we really do depend on one another. And if we can support one another through generosity, then we're really expressing this wisdom of interconnectedness in our lives as well. We're making our own contribution to this network that's, in a way, a little bit invisible. It's hard to see that we're all interconnected, but maybe through generosity, we start to access an awareness that it's true, we are interconnected and our actions do have consequences. And if we are generous, that's very, very positive and it can really benefit other people. I had a strange experience of interconnectedness on Saturday night. I was at Taraloka Retreat Centre doing a young women's weekend retreat, and it was a really lovely evening, and quite a few people had gone out to watch the sunset, and I'd been out watching the sunset, and I'd gone back in again, and then just before bed I went outside again. I was on my own in the garden, and it was really getting close to dark, and so I was looking up at the sky, which was a bit like the colour of the ceiling actually. So it was a very deep blue, it was beautiful dark blue sky. But as I was looking up, I noticed there was this long line of mosquitoes above me. So one actually managed to get me here. But I was like, oh, all these mosquitoes are above me, and they're nowhere else. That's strange. And I took a few steps back, and they kind of followed me back. I took 2 steps forward, a few steps forward, and they followed me forward. I took 1 step left, and they all followed me. So they were completely in tune with where I was. I think they must have been following the heat that was rising from my body. So I've got no idea that there's heat rising from my body most of the time, but obviously it's happening because they are responding to it. So I thought it was just really a great way of realizing how all the time things are happening on the basis of what's happening with us. And there's this like ripple out effect that we're not always aware of. And, that's true. And if we act generously, again, we can't track necessarily the consequences of that. It might be quite invisible, but there will be consequences. There'll be this ripple out of positivity from the positive acts that we make. And so being generous, supporting one another, expressing metta between us will have this ripple out effect. And that's guaranteed, and we just might not see it. And it is hard to kind of know that, as we go around in our fixed and separate worlds, usually. And one way that we can access this sense of interconnectedness is through doing gratitude exercises. So we've done this again on the intermediate course, where you kind of make a list of all the people that you're grateful for. And I think that can really help to realise interconnectedness, and that can then support our wanting to be generous and wanting to have a positive effect on other people. And through that, we really feel like how important it is to us when people are generous to us. We really remember it, don't we, sometimes, if people have been generous to us, like a school teacher or a friend. And maybe, again, that just shows how important generosity is. It really has an impact on individuals, and we can offer that to other people too. So generosity is also important because it does help us to go beyond ourselves. So as I said, usually we have this kind of fixed and separate idea of our world, of our functioning. That's how we usually see the world. But really, we are part of something bigger, and we can transcend this sense of separateness through going beyond ourselves to maybe giving to a cause that's larger than us. And I think that's often why a lot of people do want to support charities through financial gifts, because it connects you in with, we are, all part of the same world. And if you can contribute to a cause that's larger than your own self, you can kind of access that idea that it isn't all about us, and there are other people out there. We can do things for other people, and that can also often support us in our desires to do things like, I remember when I was doing morning meditation quite a lot when I first coming here for morning meditation, and Mogavanksa were often saying, if you don't want to do it for yourself, just do it for other people. Because if you wake up in the morning, you don't want to get up out of bed, do you? But if you know that being in a positive state of mind yourself will benefit others, you can really go beyond your own kind of wants and preferences through giving to other people. So generosity is important because it helps us to go beyond ourselves, go beyond a fixed view of being separate. And if we are giving away material things or sharing them, then we can loosen our attachment to those things. And this is another reason why it's important. So we might find that through giving possessions away or just giving gifts, that we don't rely so much on having stuff ourselves. And again, that can be really helpful in terms of living simply and feeling kind of free of having tons of stuff in one's house. And we might realise our happiness isn't so reliant on having this stuff, because we've given something away and actually we're still fine. And the person's quite happy that they've got the thing. And it can loosen our attachment to material things. I think I learnt this a little bit a hard way once, where I was on a retreat and I had this great big purple jumper which I loved. It happened to come to me through nefarious means, is that the right word? So I used to work in the evolution shop, and TK Maxx was next to the evolution shop, and they had their skips in the same place where our bins were. And my good friend at the time, Sam, who worked with me, would go bin diving and produce all this wonderful stuff from TK Maxx that they'd thrown away. So I got some fantastic sunglasses that way, and this amazing, quite expensive, woolly purple jumper that was just a little bit bobbly on the arm, and someone had returned it and they just chucked it away, basically. So I had this jumper, really liked it, probably wouldn't have bought it for myself because it was quite expensive. Then I was on retreat, and my friend who was over from Poland, living in this country for a while, was wearing my jumper. So I had lent it to her. So I had been generous. I'd lent her my jumper. She was really enjoying wearing it. And I thought I could give that jumper to my friend. She's actually called Sadhujala now. She was on the same ordination retreat that Satshoti was supporting. And I just thought, but I love that jumper so much. It's mine. Even though I'd kind of got it out of a bin not that long ago, it was like it was mine now, and I really needed it. So I thought, this little secret thought of maybe I could give it to her, I just let it settle back somewhere in the subconscious, and that jumper was still mine. Went home, and she didn't have many jumpers, just to say, she really didn't have many jumpers. She'd come over from Poland and hadn't brought much with her. And anyway, I go home, about a week later, I put the jumper in the washing machine and I shrink it. So then I don't have the jumper either. And, I was fine. I didn't really need the jumper. I thought that, this jumper was mine. I really needed it because I didn't have many jumpers either. I think I've got a thing about jumpers. But I realised I really didn't need this jumper. I thought I really did, and that was why I couldn't give it away. And then I didn't have it. And I realised I could have given it away, and she would have been really happy with the jumper. She probably wouldn't have shrunken it, and the jumper would still be in the world, bringing happiness to all who wore it. So this was me learning the hard way that actually I probably can give more possessions away than I think. I probably don't need as much as I think I do. Yes. So there's some reasons why generosity is important. I have to watch out for giving myself a hard time at not being generous enough. So I do work with the precept of generosity in terms of like not taking the not given. I think for some reason, possibly, it will a lot be to do with some early conditioning. I feel a bit hazy sometimes about taking the not given, and I often have to acknowledge this with my friends, even confess it and say, oh, I've taken the not given here. And I think maybe part of that being true has also led me to kind of sometimes think, oh, I'm just not generous enough, I could be more generous. And I think that's probably true, I definitely could be. It's definitely true. But I also have to watch out for giving myself a hard time and going around thinking, I'm not generous, because in a way, that's kind of leading to me feeling a bit kind of tight. And actually what we're looking for is this kind of attitude of giving. So generosity is definitely an attitude of sharing, of wanting to express love, perhaps, or express when you're passionate for something and you want to share that with others. And a quote from Sangha is that generosity is above all an attitude of heart and mind, indeed of one's whole being. And actually, if we can cultivate this attitude, it will follow that we'll act that out through active kind of ways. So I think it's important that we don't give ourselves too much of a hard time about, because generosity is limitless. We can just start from where we are and just make small changes to grow more and more in the direction of limitless generosity. But if we're not at limitless generosity quite yet, that's okay. It's a training, we can train. And I had an experience of this once. I was walking again down to the Evolution shop in the morning, going to work, and I was in this moment of kind of questioning whether I was generous enough or not, and getting a bit worried about it. And then this girl was there, and she was, I think, from China. She was new to the city, and she didn't know where she was, and she was looking at a map. And she was like, oh, do you know where such and such a place is at the university? And I did know where it was. And I said, oh, yeah, I do know where that is. I'll walk you there. And we just walked down West Street, and I pointed the right direction and set her off on her way. It was nice to meet her, have a little chat about, what she'd come here to do and things like that. And then I went to work. And that was really interesting because there I was worrying about not being generous enough. And then when the opportunity presented itself, I just responded. I responded with metta and with helping her out in the way that she needed. And that helped me to think, okay, I probably do have a generous attitude, and I can just find that during the days there probably will be ways in which I can just connect and respond and act generously. I was also at Taraloka at the weekend on retreat, and there was the Dharna appeal, and I was kind of co-leading this retreat. And often when you're co-leading on a retreat, you're not getting paid for it at all. You're kind of there out of your own spare time. But kind of a part of that, you can, just as anybody, choose whether to give dharna or not. And I went to the people who were doing the dharna because I wanted to buy a book as a gift. And they said, oh, you don't have, if you don't want to give, you're already giving. And I said, oh, actually, I'm wanting to buy this book as a gift. And I did think, oh, maybe I could give some money towards a particular project that they've got going on at the moment. But I don't have very much money in my account at the moment. And I thought, well, I'm buying this gift. And again, I kind of get into the story that I should have given money. I should have given money to that project because they need money. And then again, reflecting on that I'd given a lot of my time and energy to this weekend retreat. I was buying a gift of a book actually right at that moment. So we might catch ourselves out thinking that we're not generous, but actually if we look beyond that and kind of look at our lives, we probably will find ways in which we're being generous. And there might be ways in which we can just stretch that out a little bit further and take on possibly personal precepts as to how we could give that little bit more. We will be generous in our lives, and we do benefit from that probably, and we can reflect on that. We can reflect on, when am I generous? How does that benefit me? And that's perfectly okay. So again, I think people can sometimes feel like there's some kind of rule that means that you can't reflect on the positivity of your own action. But really, it's really great to do that. You know, your positive actions have positive effects, and if you're experiencing them, that's really great. And you can reflect on that, and that will probably lead to happiness, and happiness will probably lead to more and more positive states of mind. And there are examples of this in the Pali Canon where people who give to the Buddha reflect on how much they give to the Buddha and how much that supports them in their lives, and that's their route, in a way, to positive mental states. So we often have this common question when we're looking at generosity. We often have people saying, oh, I do give a lot. I actually feel like I give too much, and I need a little bit of me time, or I need a little bit back, and I don't get anything back because I'm always giving. So that is a common experience, I think, of many people. And it's true that we really do need to attend to our basic needs. You know, we have needs of, you know, food, money, shelter. We probably need, you know, ease and companionship. And if we feel like we're always kind of going beyond ourselves, maybe sometimes we can feel like we're heading towards a burnout or something like that. And I think it's important to take those things seriously. You know, if you are feeling resentment in your life about what you're doing, the conditions that you're in, maybe reflecting on those conditions. Is there anything that can change within them? If not, how can you support yourself in those conditions as much as you need to? And if we are giving a lot, maybe we can just really consciously bring that to mind, that we are giving, and notice that, and again, look for, are we benefiting from the ways that we're giving? Is there a way that I can feel the positivity of my actions through these conditions? Okay, so moving on to seeing the links between generosity and a spiritual community then. So generosity is also crucial to a spiritual life, because if we are generous, when we are giving or having a generous attitude, we can create Sangha. And here we are, we're a Sangha, and there's so many, I could list lots of ways in which people that I'm looking at here give in many different ways. And if we didn't have Sangha, we'd find progress in our spiritual lives really difficult. So often people, if they stop going to either our Buddhist group or they've had another Buddhist group and they try and practice at home, it can be quite challenging to practice on your own. So Sangha can really support people's spiritual progress. Generosity leads to Sangha, leads to spiritual community. And this, again, has a historical context. So in the Buddha's time, there was a kind of symbiosis within their society where householders, people who had money and property, would support the monks and nuns, the kind of full-timers, in their Dharma life. And this benefited both kind of forms of society, if you like. So the householders gave food and shelter and material to the homeless ones, the people who'd gone forth, and the people who'd gone forth gave the gift of the Dharma. They gave their wider perspective to the householders. And this was kind of a mutually beneficial way of living. And actually the Buddha told his followers to give the Dharma for the welfare of the many. So that was very much their attitude. They had this altruistic attitude that they were being supported, they were being given food and shelter materials, but they were given that in order for them to be able to offer welfare for the many. And I've got a quote that the Buddha said to his first disciples, actually, that I'll read out. He said, "Go now and wander for the welfare of happiness of many, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit and happiness of gods and humans. Teach the Dhamma that is good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. Explain a spiritual life that is utterly perfect and pure. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who will be lost through not hearing the Dhamma. There are some who will understand the Dhamma." So I think the householders at that time could really see how they were benefiting from people going forth and having this very altruistic, compassionate motivation for homelessness, for not owning things. And so this historical context kind of underpinned the very first Sanghas. And if it wasn't for the generosity of those householders, it would never have been possible. You know, Buddhism may not have kind of flourished in the way that it did and spread across the world in the way that it did. It's all founded on generosity. The Sangha is founded in generosity. And in generosity it creates Sangha. So another story from the Buddha's time was there was a man called Hataka of Alavi. And he was one of the foremost disciples of the Buddha, who was a householder. And he'd spent time with the Buddha, and he really enjoyed spending time with the Buddha and his disciples, and he'd given a lot. But then the group, the fellowship of the Buddha, they were all moving on. And he was a bit like, oh, my Sangha, so I'm not going to have my Sangha, and what will I do? And the Buddha laid out some principles for Hataka so that he could create a community around him, create a Sangha around him. And the very first principle that the Buddha gave Hataka was to give gifts. He said, if you give gifts, people will gather. You will find there will be a gathering. And then the other principles are also kind of based in generosity as well, as talking with kindly words. So again, we can use our speech to be generous. Doing beneficial activity. So again, any activity that's beneficial, if you take part in that, that's kind of offering your energy and your time, your action to something being generous. And then the fourth one is treating people with equality or exemplification. So I think there's a kind of wee thread of generosity in that if we're respectful of people, treating people equally, then again, that's a generous attitude. And Hataka, the Buddha came back after some time of wandering, and Hataka had this great Sangha around him. He had loads of friends, and he was really happy because he'd created spiritual community on the basis of generosity, just as the Buddha had asked him to. Because the Buddha was like, hey, you've got a community, how did that happen? And Hataka was like, well, I just did what you told me to do, I was generous, and here we go, So yeah, all these principles based in generosity, positive speech, rejoicing in merits. We can respond to people's highest qualities within the Sangha, and we can see people's potential, and we can draw that out of them by speaking positively, rejoicing in merits, and that gives each of us a chance to see our own merits, and that kind of, again, forms the basis of connection within the Sangha. So whatever ways we're giving, generosity creates spiritual community, and it can become like the lifeblood. It can be what kind of really sustains spiritual community. And that's our aim here in the centre, is to exemplify this, to form a spiritual community from which we're all benefiting. And that's why we have the Dharma economy. So that's why we offer everything that's Buddhist and meditation related here through Dharma, so that anybody, whoever they are, whoever you are, can come and benefit from this principle of generosity and be a part of the spiritual community. It's not reciprocal, it's not I'll do this if you do that. We're all here together, forming the community together. And there's this principle of dana within the economy of the Buddhist Centre as well, within the people who are supported to work here. But also in all of the people that are coming here, what we want is for people to just come and take what it is that you need, what it is that we need, each of us, and to just give what we can. And not to go any further than that, not to be demanded upon in any way, just to give what you can. So generosity creates community, and through a generous community we can create abundance. And back to Ratnasambhava, he exemplifies abundance, he exemplifies richness, abundance, and we see abundance here in the Sheffield Sangha. So we've got a beautiful garden, we've got a beautiful centre, so much generosity goes into those things. And there's just abundance. There's an abundance of tea, there's an abundance of flowers, there's an abundance of beautiful shrines. So we all benefit from the abundance that has generosity at its heart. And there's the abundance of the Dana cafe, which again, so many people's time and energy goes into, and so many people benefit from that, in the community that just enjoy going there because it's such a positive place to be. And I know people, really rejoice in the Dharma team. People that don't come as part of the Sangha, but just come to the cafe in order to benefit from the abundance of kind of love and, connection that they find there. I'm thinking of another funny story, but I think I'm going to let that one go. So the summer fair is a really great example of the generosity of people. How many people here helped out at the summer fair? Yeah, that's pretty much a lot of you, yeah. So over 100 volunteers came, loads of people donated, and we created this atmosphere of abundance on the day. So I wasn't there, unfortunately. I was doing guided meditation at Glastonbury, but I came home and I could really feel something had happened. Something had really happened here, and I could see it in the connections between people. I saw it in the photos that Pete took. So yeah, it's a real atmosphere of abundance on the day that all the local community shared in. So many people came and benefited from that. And there was material abundance that came from that. So we raised £6,500. That's quite a lot of money, and that's money that we're going to give away that other people are going to benefit from. And I was just talking to Anna in the tea room, and she was saying that a lot of people that do other fairs around the community probably don't make that much money from them, actually. And again, it's just a sign that the amount of generosity that goes into the summer fair can really lead to this abundance that many, many people benefit from, the people involved, the people that will receive the money. And through the years, we've given so much money to so many different projects, and there are individuals that have benefited from the abundance that we create as a spiritual community. So that's our project here. We're in a process of creating community based on generosity, and we can all experience the richness and abundance of Ratnasambhava in this realm in Sheffield Buddhist Centre. So I'm just going to really quickly mention a couple of other things, and that's that in my experience I find this sense of abundance that I think really in my life that really does come from being part of the Sangha, and I really benefit from that. It can lead to less fear. So although traditionally Ratnasambhava is not associated with fear, we heard about fearlessness last week from Bodhinaga with Amoghasiddhi, the Green Buddha. But my experience is that through being part of the Sangha, I really do feel quite relaxed and held and less fearful. So there's a female consort to Ratnasambhava that I'm just going to put a picture up, Marmaki, and she's actually called the Mind Maker. So paradoxically, she makes everything kind of hers in order to go beyond the idea of possessions altogether. So in a way, through being in the Sangha and through benefiting from the connections and the abundance that we all create, I kind of feel a connection to the Mind Maker in a way. I feel like everything's kind of mine because nothing kind of is, and I'm held by the Sangha. So it sounds a bit vague maybe, or even kind of a bit fantastical, but that really is my experience. And again, if I've ever been in a situation where I am making something mine in a kind of that's mine and nobody else's, it doesn't lead to community, and it doesn't lead to this relaxed state. So I was on a train in India once, and I was really worried about my shoes getting stolen, and I'd locked my bag onto the metal rail, and I was really scared things were going to get stolen. And then I thought, actually, my shoes are just my shoes. I could get more shoes if they were stolen. And there was just something about seeing that all shoes could be my shoes, in a way. It's really hard to describe this. Anyway, I hope I've given you a little bit of a flavour in that. So yeah, there is enough in the world for all of us. And through this paradoxical sense of everything being ours, we don't have to cling so much to our possessions. And I think abundance can also take us beyond pride. So if there is enough in the world, if there's just this abundance of skills and qualities and possessions, we don't have to feel proud about the particular ones that we have. And Ratnasambhava transforms pride into the wisdom of sameness. So we can just rejoice in that we all have positive qualities and skills, and we don't have to cling on to our own. We can rejoice in each other and all benefit from this kind of context of wonderfulness that we all present and that we all contribute. There's nothing that we need to kind of claim or hold on to. And I'm just going to properly finish now on a kind of a little nod towards the Bodhisattva, the being that wants all beings to benefit, wants all beings to reach enlightenment. So we've had another talk on Ratnasambhava, and that was given by Pradaya, and he really brought this out in his talk, so I'd really recommend listening to this. But this is a quote from Sangharakshita. Ultimately, as in the case of the Bodhisattva, generosity reaches a point where the giver, gift, and recipient of the gift cease to be distinguishable. So generosity reaches a point where the giver, gift, and recipient of the gift cease to be distinguishable. So again, this just links up to all these ideas of interconnectedness and of abundance that I've been talking about. So what can we do about all of this? I think we can reflect on the ways in which we're already generous, and we can rejoice in those ways. But we could also look at, is there a way we could give more? Is there a precept that we want to take about being particularly generous in a particular way on a particular day? So you might want to think about that. I've listed lots of different ways of giving, so we could talk about that in our groups. Is there a way in which we'd like to take on a precept in order to just gently stretch our practice of generosity? Okay, thank you.